name is Jenny Lauren Dowden for Conduit News, and today we have State Senator Dan Sullivan joining us. He represents District 20 to talk about the new Act 372, that deals with sexually inappropriate content in public libraries. Hi, Senator.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Of course. I have several questions for you to talk, dealing with Act 372. Of course, you were the main sponsor of this bill, Senate Bill 81. And it passed, was recently signed by Governor Sanders, and will become law July 1st. But just recently, a Central Arkansas Library Board voted to allow their attorneys to pursue litigation against this act. Talk to us about that.
Well, yes, and I don't know what they plan to do. They don't know what they plan to do. They're struggling to find out if it's constitutional or unconstitutional. It's constitutional. You know, the Attorney General weighed in, and many people may have seen that in the Democrat Gazette. The bill only talks about material that's physically in the library, and the folks from the Central Arkansas Library System didn't seem to understand that, even though the language is very clear in the bill. And again, they're just unclear about what they can pursue. They're just not happy, and they need to get over it. This is the law. They need to follow the law.
What do you think is the main factor that this library board has regarding this law? You would think that the majority of adults would agree that sexually inappropriate content does not need to be in a children's section.
Yeah, sure. And, you know, one of the first things the bill does is bring librarians and teachers under current obscenity law. It didn't change obscenity law. It just brought librarians and teachers under the law. You know, we don't allow pharmacists to break drug laws and peddle illegal material. We don't allow a lot of people to do things that are illegal. We don't allow the regular population, people that are listening, to violate obscenity laws. So I don't know what problem the Central Arkansas Library Board has with making it illegal to distribute obscene material to children. Do they want to keep that? They actually think it's appropriate to get our adults and librarians to give obscene material to children. If they think that's illegal, then are unconstitutional. And they also need to look at other states. We're not the only state that has this. Multiple states have this law, are very similar, and has all been determined to be constitutional.
Talk to us about the process. It's not as if someone can say, you have this book in the library, it should not be there, therefore criminal charges are going to happen. It's not. There are several things in place that will have to deem a book being inappropriate. Talk to us about that.
Sure. And, you know, there is already laws in place that say you can't display sexually explicit material to children. That law is already on the books. All the bill does is say not only can you not display it, you can't distribute it. Now, who would think that's a step too far? If you can't display it, but it's okay to distribute it. Again, I think the Central Arkansas Library System is way off base. If you can't display it, you shouldn't be able to distribute it. That's what the law says. However, now the bill does go one step further in the challenge process. The current challenge process, and of course, this bill codified it statewide, so we had the same process as statewide. But in a public library, if you want to challenge a book, you go to the librarian. If you're not satisfied with the librarian's decision, it goes to the library board. The library board has a chance to then weigh in and work with the community for what community standards are. And if the library board makes the decision and the person appealing that decision doesn't like that, now they can go to their elected officials. Now, why would someone be upset with taking a decision to elected officials? It just seems it's our American standard of government that elected officials who are accountable, library boards are not accountable to the public, but your elected officials are. So your quorum court or your city council, as the case may be, will then weigh in on the placement of books. They can't ban a book. They can't, but that's their job as elected officials. And if the people are not, don't like that decision, then they can address that during the election process. That's been our system of government for over 200 years. And why Nate Coulter and the library board don't think it's appropriate to let elected officials be the appeal process, it's kind of beyond me. And the bill also talks to schools and lets school boards make that decision. And all those decisions have to be made publicly. That's a big change. You can't go behind closed doors and have a secret vote. You have to make that debate and those discussions public. The last thing the bill does is that says the parent has a right to see what their children are checking out. Mm-hmm. Now, who is opposed to letting parents know what their children are checking out? Apparently, some are.
Yeah, the one thing that was interesting to me about the Central Arkansas Library Board's decision was, and I believe this was Coulter saying this, at first they were going to use government money to sue the government. Then it was like, well, this is going to be done by pro bono work. And to me, it seems, well, we don't know how we're going to pay for it. We don't know where the money is going to come from. We just know that we want to file a lawsuit against this new law.
Yeah, and I think Mr. Coulter makes almost $200,000 a year to say things like that, when clearly this bill is passed in other states and has been determined to be constitutional at the state level, at least. And they want to, again, use government money to sue the government. And, the patrons of that region, the Central Arkansas, already pay one of the highest tax rates in the state for their library, well beyond what anybody else pays. And Mr. Coulter and that library board have decided to use government taxpayer-funded dollars to sue the government. We'll see how that works out for them.
One other thing that was said was that you were making this personal, that you're personally attacking him because you can't defend the law itself. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, when you can't be successful at your lawsuit, then you have to find something else to say. And placing yourself as the victim seems to be a good thing. So if Mr. Coulter feels like he's a victim, then he could have invited me to meet with the Central Arkansas Library Board. Be glad to do that, talk through the law. I'm sure the Attorney General will be glad to talk through the law. But again, when someone loses on or can't defend their position, then they just turn themselves into a victim. Mr. Coulter's not the victim. The victim is the taxpayer whose money is potentially going to be used on their tax dollars to sue the state.
One thing before we let you go, I want to talk to you about the phrase banning books. Regardless of how many times this has been debunked, it's not banning books. You can probably still go to another library or on Amazon and purchase it. Therefore, it's not banned. It's just not selected for a particular library system. Talk to us about that phrase, how the left has weaponized it so much. It's even being used, up here in a local school board race that's happening right now in the Fayetteville Public Schools, and the incumbent board member did a big post about how he's not going to ban any books. And to me, that just seems like he's just trying to stir the pot and get some votes from some of those left-wing voters. But this really isn't a left or right issue, and it's not even about banning books. Give us your opinion.
Sure, they need to be consistent. Those that call this book banning also are the ones that banned Dr. Seuss. Yeah. They pulled Dr. Seuss books off the library shelves and gave them away. They couldn't have them on the shelves because it was racist or sexist or whatever the proper term is, or the term they use. So they just used banning. And of course, that's a very emotionally charged word, but it's not banning books at all. It's just moving them to an appropriate place. And the law says that. Again, the law already says that you can't display material that's inappropriate to children and sexually explicit. You can't display that. And to say now we can't distribute it to children or make it available to children is just a small step in the right direction. Certainly not banning anything, but it allows the left and progressives and Mr. Coulter and others to get people emotionally involved. I had a lady that called me up and wanted to know if I was the guy banning books. And where'd you get that? And she said, well, off of Facebook. She said, it's all over Facebook that you're banning books. And, it's just not true. Again, they're banning Dr. Seuss. They ban sexually explicit magazines. You don't see Hustler or Playboy or any other sexually explicit books in our library. Are they banning those too? Or are they just making good common sense decisions that represent their local public interest? That's all we're asking. And this bill was designed to start those conversations about what the general public in their region believes is appropriate to have in their public library and their public schools.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Anything else that you would like to add before we let you go?
I just appreciate all the support we've gotten. And I think the Senate Bill 81 and Act 372 are really good. And I knew there would be a lot of discussion about this. Discussion and debate is the foundation of our country. Those principles are, and having these discussions with you today, even with the Central Arkansas Library System, I'd welcome the opportunity to come and talk with them. Make that a public meeting, and let's vet the bill in public in their meetings. That's the basis for our country, and I hope we will continue to use that.
Thank you so much, Senator. I hope to have you back on again soon.
Thank you.